It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
So big fun on the House floor today as gun fetish Barbie and Marjorie Three Names went after it. Evidently called her a little female dog. Evidently this is what Marjorie Three Names called gun fetish Barbie. A little three-legged dog. No, a little female dog. I can't say the other word. You know what I'm getting at. All because they have competing impeachment bills. Yeah, the crazy is taking over. And look, as I said from the beginning, I wanted Kevin McCarthy to get the speakership. I wanted him to have the ulcers. I wanted him to think of these two idiots going at each other all the time. I wanted this for him. And now he has had it. And here to share some thoughts on the big day, I've asked our good friend Pete Dominick to come talk with us. Pete is a stand-up comic, also host of Stand Up with Pete Dominick. You can find that at standupwithpetedominick.com and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'll get that as well. Pete, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I will always take time with you, and it was a crazy day in Washington. There's a lot of action because you had the censorship, or one might look at it differently as like a badge of honor of Adam Schiff by these crazy people. And then you had John Durham being questioned as well, which of course obfuscates other hearings. There was an important Senate hearing as well. But yeah, and then of course the fight that you just mentioned. So a lot to talk about today. A lot happened today. But I think it's really important. You and I are old enough. You're older than me, but we're old enough to remember that John Boehner had to deal with these psychos, and he's like, well, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going to go work for a marijuana company. and then who comes in? Mr. Serious, policy wonk, yeah. Paul Ryan, who to me was always a mendacious, terrible, corrupted person in ideology, to say it nicely. And I always said he was an extremist, and then he takes over, and then he has to deal with even crazier people. Yeah. And then he says, peace, I'm out of here. And he goes to work in the private sector, takes some big cushy job. And also, I think, on the board of Fox News, right? And now you're left with all hollow barrel. Kevin McCarthy stands for nothing, has no principles, will sell out to anybody. He's a pilot fish's pilot fish. And now he can't obviously control these people either. And they're tearing each other apart. In the meantime, Democrats are as good as I've ever seen them. They are as together as I've ever seen them. They are as rhetorically, I think, on target as we could ever imagine. It used to be these old, like Gerald Nadler types. He's still there, believe it or not, 120. But now you've got so many people out there, from Hakeem Jeffries to AOC to Daniel Goldman and Jared Moskowitz. There's like dozens of amazing speakers who are very, very good, and they were good today. Jamie Raskin. I mean, I could go on and on. What are your thoughts?
No, they were great today, but here's the thing: it's kind of hard not to be, given the material that's being handed.
I hear you.
You as a comedian looking at this, going, "This is gold." Seeing these two idiots, gun fetish Barbie and Marjorie Three Names at each other over, they're going to try and impeach the president that there's no basis for, but I was waiting for a slap fest. And then that Durham hearing, my goodness, the level of red hat was just remarkable to me. So from your perspective as a comedian, this has got to be gold.
Well, listen, if you want to have a serious conversation about it, the truth is you can't do comedy about politics, hardly any. And more, because people can't stand it. So, for comedy on social media, yeah, but and there is plenty to talk about, obviously, but it's just a constant party of contradictions, Rick, and that's always funny because you can always turn these things into a joke. When, I mean, today, John Durham didn't even understand what Matt Gaetz described to him, the Washington Generals who always lose to the Harlem Globetrotters. They're paid to lose. And he explained that it was so insulting, so disrespectful, Matt Gaetz, to this guy, John Durham, that, I don't think he was expecting that. He thought Republicans brought him up there, and he was shot. He was a wreck, just an absolute wreck there. And it was a terrible day for Republicans. The idea that they censored Adam Schiff, and of course, George Santos is out to do whatever he wants. We're going to find out more about him later this week, who paid for his bail. And that they didn't realize that censoring only made Adam Schiff much like Obi-Wan Kenobi when he was struck down. I mean, Adam Schiff should have said, "If you censor me today, I'll be more powerful than ever before."
The first thing he did, man, is they sent out fundraising emails. He's going to raise a ton of money off of this, and they're going to help. They're going to put him in the Senate. This could put him in the Senate.
There are two women that would both make awesome senators that are running California. They're both congresswomen as well, Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. They'd both be great, but they would kill both of them to be censured by this Republican House, because the attention that it's given him and the money that it's raising for him. And, listen, Adam Schiff, I don't know what you think about him. I think he's a superstar. I think that he has a memory for details, and he has a mind and understanding of law. He's a former, I think, DA and constitutional law. He's a brilliant guy, and it's just a real dumb thing to go after him, I think.
No, but here's the thing, and I'm glad you framed this way, because we're in this world, Pete, and you know this as well as anyone, where you've got on one side really smart people with credentials, they've done stuff, and then you've got people over here like Marjorie Three Names and Gun Fetish Barbie and the rest of them who have not.
Yeah.
And now we're supposed to say they're equal, and they're not. I mean, I'll bring up the Joe Rogan thing, which to me is just incredible. The fact that there's a big to-do about putting Professor Hotez on the same platform with someone like a kook like RFK Jr. To me, that, and I've had people go, well, what's wrong with them debating? Just because Professor Hotez has got a PhD doesn't mean he really knows anything. Yes, it does. It means he knows a lot.
Well, he's got more than just a PhD. Peter Hotez is a good friend of mine, and I had him on my show on Monday. And when it comes to intellect, first of all, when it's Democrats in the House versus Republicans, or even in media, the type of language and the type of vocabulary that you hear from Democrats, it's like Shakespeare versus cave people. I mean, like, I'm not saying that anybody who has a more extensive vocabulary is necessarily more intellectual, but it's a decent bet often that when it comes to argument. But then the opposite side of that is you could be really good at arguing and have a great extensive vocabulary, including for medical terminology, and have no idea what you're doing when it comes to talking about science and win a debate. And therein lies the issue. You can be a smooth talker and know some terminology, which is what RFK Jr. is. RFK Jr. is just he's a kook. More respectful version of Alex Jones. They're saying the same things. It's just that RFK is a Kennedy, and he has this voice issue as well as Alex Jones, but they're both, caricatures of human beings and performers. But the point is, RFK versus Hotez, RFK wins every time, because Peter Hotez isn't a debater. He's a scientist. He's doing science. He's peer reviewing things. He's researching. He's in a lab. He's creating life-saving vaccines. And RFK is going to say something and make something up and say something like, 10,000 studies prove this. What could Hotez say? No, they don't?
Yeah.
I mean,
in every one of these situations, Pete, the guy with the hammer wins. If you're willing to tear something down, the guy with the hammer always wins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to win a debate by being a kind of a smooth talker. I mean, I've been a part of many debates my entire career. I've watched debates, Intelligence Squared debates, Oxford-style debates, and you got to get two people that are of equal stature, education, credibility, not someone who's a great comedian and a smooth talker versus, like I talked to Hotez this week, and he said that Neil deGrasse Tyson recently did one of these debates with somebody, and he said he didn't look good. Tyson clearly knew what he was talking about a lot more, but he didn't look good. Scientists, they want to get into the nuance. They want to have longer answers. And what Hotez said was, my opinion is that Neil deGrasse Tyson having a debate with some street person sets us back. Yep. Just the idea that you're having it raises the level of the street person. In that case, by the way, me, like I interview experts all day, every day, scientists, people who are actually doing gain of function research, virologists, whatever. But that doesn't mean I could debate any of them. If the arrogance is, I don't even understand where people get this idea that they think they know more than a scientist. Even if it's not a good scientist, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how to do research. You can't read an abstract. You've never conducted a study, and it's
where you're wrong, Pete. I did my research. I was sitting on the can watching that YouTube video. I know.
No, but you could go Google anything you want, and you can find a study that will tell you can grow a tail, Rick, and I can grow my hair back. I could find a study. I could even find a supplement. I could find a research paper that's going to say the way for me to grow a tail and my hair back is to take fish oil pills. I could find that study, and then I could go disseminate it across social media and to all my friends. That's not how it works.
Why do I have to get the tail, Pete?
Well, I wasn't sure what you want. I wasn't sure what you wanted to change about your physical body. I made an assumption, and it was unfair. I apologize. I take it back.
Why do I get the tail? I don't want a tail.
It was a functional tail. It was like you could swing from trees.
I could whip people with it.
You could hit people for sure. You could use it as a weapon. It's got spikes on it. You can make it whatever you want. This study says.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're Pete Dominick, stand-up comic, also podcaster. StandUpWithPeteDominick.com, the website if you want to check out the work that he does there. Also, make sure you get his podcast, one of my favorite out there. Now, here's the thing, and this is what bothers me. I mean, I look at Rogan, and I've listened. I like him. I don't like him. I don't have any visceral hatred or love. He is what he is. But to platform someone like this and to create this kind of environment, we talked about the blood-brain barrier and how Wi-Fi is killing us, and how it was just one of these things where you're scaring the dim. You're getting the dim all worked up to the point where, as I'm sure Professor Hotez told you, someone showed up at his freaking house.
Yeah, I saw that. I had talked to him just like an hour before that. As a matter of fact, privately we were talking, and then right after that, that's what happened. Listen, I disagree with you on Joe, and I know Joe, and I like Joe personally. Has been really good to me. I mean, we came up in comedy together, and after I lost my gig at Sirius, he had me on a show to help me launch my podcast. It was a really amazing thing, and I thought our conversation was great. But something happened with COVID. And when he went to Spotify, and the kind of what he sees as the canceling of a lot of comedians and other men. And I'd love to talk to him about it. I'd love to hear more what he thinks about it. But, Peter Hotez knows Joe too. He'd been on the show 3 times. He'd privately messaged Joe several times. He told me, and you can listen to him on my podcast, talk about this timeline. And Joe didn't return his messages, and he didn't have him back on. What does that say? What kind of person then will do that, and also then platform these people? Like, what happened to him? So I do judge Joe now, and I think he's doing a lot of dangerous, irresponsible things on a regular basis, and I think it's very, very dangerous what he's doing. People are dying as a result, have died. Thousands, at least 200,000 people, Hotez says, and the studies show, died as a result of not getting a vaccine when they had easy and free access to it. They would have lived. And it's because of this kind of platforming, of these kinds of opinions. And there's no basis in truth to it. Vaccines are miracle drugs. The COVID vaccines are even more miraculous because of how quickly they were developed. They're not killing people. They are saving people. And the idea that we are demonizing, and by the way, Hotez developed his own vaccine at Baylor University. He and his team. and they should be nominated for a Nobel Prize for it, because that vaccine was rolled out in developing countries like Bangladesh and in India and Botswana and other countries in Africa, and it saved millions of kids' lives. And guess what he didn't do? Patent it. No. Anybody that wants to recreate it, they can use it. They can have it. Who paid for that? The university paid for it, and an NIH grant. No corporate shills, which is what they're calling him. He made a life-saving vaccine, and people are calling him a murderer. It's the world we live in.
No, and it's a scary world we live in, and that's why I brought it up. Look, I don't know Rogan, I don't follow him that much, but I do see the clips occasionally. And as I said from the beginning, there's only one way that Hotez would go down, and that is negatively, because all they would want to do is get that moment of honesty where he said, well, where scientists get into being honest and long-winded, and all they would take is the 30-second bit of honesty that they would then use against them.
One of the things that didn't get as much attention, and it came back up, Joe reshared this part of it, is Joe Rogan had Peter Hotez on, and they were talking about vaccines and their effectiveness. This is before COVID, I think this one was. And Joe basically was ridiculing Peter for not being healthier. He said, Peter admitted, I don't eat very well, and I eat too much, and I don't take good enough care of myself. And Joe said, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you, wouldn't that be, he was trying to make a point, Joe Rogan, and people are, that a vaccine scientist who created a life-saving vaccine not taking great care of himself is somehow a good argument or a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was sad and pathetic and cruel to say that to somebody, to juxtapose getting a vaccine and eating healthy. One of those things is the easiest thing in the world. I mean, put it this way. Imagine if we could all be extremely healthy by just getting an injection or taking a pill. I mean, by the way, there are a lot of pills and treatments that we do take that make our lives much better. Guess who makes them? Pharmaceutical companies, which I'll never defend, and they're easy to criticize, but they make people's lives a lot healthier and better and save your lives in a lot of ways too. It's a nuanced conversation and it matters, but the idea that you're going to sit here and say, oh, why don't you take better care of yourself? You're sitting here telling people to get vaccinated, and meanwhile you eat bad food. What? Food? What are we doing? Food is an addiction. Like, everybody has issues around food. It's a preposterous notion to say that it's easy to eat well. It's easy to get a vaccine and not die. It's the easiest thing I've ever did or done to not die was getting jabbed.
Yeah. No, look, I had several people wish me dead here recently because I finally contracted COVID, and it was not fun. But I was glad I got the vaccine and the booster. I think it's what helped me get through it. But I was amazed at the number of people who wished me ill, and I want to remind you, didn't work.
I apologize for those texts.
Last question I got for you. I look at RFK Jr. Well, I see him as just a kook, going to be speaking at the Maniacs for Liberty group in Philadelphia. Those Mom for Liberty idiots.
Oh no, yeah.
Well,
by the way,
is there a moment where we finally realize that there are some kooks on the Democratic side too?
I mean, there's no kooks that are lawmakers in the United States Senate or House. So if you want to say that there are people who identify as members of the Democratic Party that are kooks, sure, fine, yes, let's define kook. But there are no anti-vaxxers in the House or in the Senate. There's no climate change deniers. There's nobody that wants to take your voting rights away. There's nobody in the House or Senate or any state house that's a Democrat that does not think Joe Biden won the election. I classify kooks as Earth 1 and Earth 2. Those that believe in reality and live in reality, and those who don't. Are people that identify as Democrats sometimes that? Yeah. But you can't show me a kook in the House or the Senate in 2023 that believes in crazy conspiracy theories, that doesn't believe that things that are happening happened. I mean, I don't think you'll find any. I
agree with you. It's a good definition. Like it. Earth 1 and Earth 2. It's an interesting way of putting it. But Pete, as always, great stuff. I appreciate you taking some time for us. Hope folks will check out the podcast, Stand Up with Pete Dominick, standupwithpetedominick.com, the website.
By the way, Earth 1 is the Earth on fire. Earth 2 is not having any issues with climate at all. It's great.
Okay.
Burn it up.
All right, there we go. Pete, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Good stuff. Pete Dominic. Make sure you check out the website, standupwithpetedominic.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to call.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
We've been farming the same farm for 3 generations, and it's just always been where I've wanted to be. Any farmer you talk to in Montana will tell you that the climate is definitely changing. The weather is way more extreme. We went from the wettest year we've ever had to this year with the worst drought we've had since the 80s. We have done everything we can to keep water going, but it got close to running out. Farmers can't afford the cost of climate change. Congress has to get this done.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
So some good news on Monday. The president and the administration is going to be going around the country saying, hey, you know what? We did this. Look what we've been doing. The road show will begin on the 26th. Going to travel across multiple states, pointing out the fact that through the American Rescue Plan, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, also the Inflation Reduction Act, lots of investments going into projects that are being built, new roads, new bridges, chip manufacturing plants, new clean energy investments, new manufacturing returning, things they should have been doing all along, as I've been saying. They now have a website that I didn't know about, and I think because of the Shapiro thing, and good on Shapiro for the live feed of the construction being done on I-95. The website invest.gov. You can see all the projects that are going on and the investments happening in communities across the country. Good stuff. Got to highlight this. Got to get out there and point out, and I'm still going back to my 20-foot cardboard cutouts of Joe Biden pointing, going, I did that. And pointing out the reality that Republicans all along this way. Now remember, the whole debt debacle, the whole debt ceiling debacle was all about gutting these investments. It was all about repealing provisions of investing in the future. And I would argue, quite simply, all politically motivated. It's not that Republicans don't want to invest in infrastructure. They don't. They don't do it. They may say they do. I mean, we went through 4 years of Trump having every week being infrastructure. We didn't put a shovel in the ground. Well, he did at Foxconn. That was supposed to be, what was it, like a gazillion million jobs, and turned out to be a handful. Their policies don't bring us anything. Biden's actually doing the work. And, going across the country into these states where things are getting done, I think important. And I think having the kind of feed like we saw earlier on I-95, I think that stuff's important. I think the visuals are important. And then talking about the jobs that are being created. The fact that federal money is being used in these projects means prevailing wage laws are enforced, means workers are getting good wages, good benefits, good conditions. There's a floor under their feet, and that money is then going back into the local economy and reverberating through. This is good stuff. The faster we roll out more of it, the better. But all we hear from our Republican friends are austerity, cut, slash, burn. Make government so small we can drown it in a bathtub. This is where you got to tell the other side of this story. The investments that are going to be made and how they're going to benefit us. So good on the administration. Invest.gov, the website.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind. The union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.